He's from Ethiopia, and he's a Family Watch in Africa director since recently, and we really appreciate his participation here today. We're going to, without further ado, turn the time over to him, and we want to ask when there are questions to be brief and to at least bring some question. We like to have comments, but also questions. So when that time comes, so Dr. Seyoum, thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Good morning. It's my pleasure and honor to be here this morning to present how IPPF and the NFPA are manipulating African policies. This is going to be an eye-opener to all of us because these agencies and their affiliates have been disguising themselves through a number of activities, plans in promoting their deceptive agenda. So, how did Africa get here? I would like to start by asking this very important question. We have reached at a crossroad, and we are now having already two parallel regimes going together. The one the ICPD25 NFPA session kicking off this morning as we speak now in the KICC, and here we are talking about their different agendas since yesterday. And so how did we get here? The whole answer revolves around one organization, the International Planned Parenthood Federation. And this organization has key strategies to infiltrate Africa with its deceptive strategies, and one of them, in fact, the forefront being the agenda of comprehensive sexuality education. And how do these people infiltrate the African institutions? First, by claiming that research shows that CSE and SRHR will solve all of Africa's problems. They tell us now that violence, abuse, disease, poverty, and even now that it's a solution for the climate change. So they are associating it with climate change as well. And the second strategy is to scare African officials, legal to 17-year-olds with that of the 18 and lump these statistics together and give a very high inflated number, and because of that our leaders get scared or concerned, and they will do anything what these agencies tell them to do. There are other strategies. They make outrageous claims on what CSC will do, comprehensive sexuality education will do. They say it's a solution for the HIV burden Africa is going through, and they are also saying it reduces maternal mortality, infant mortality. Like I said earlier, they even say it's a solution for the climate change we are experiencing now. They also hide the curriculum from parents. Parents are not allowed to ask what kind of education their children are getting in different schools. And they also go around governments and parents, and they override certain levels or hierarchies, and they manipulate or navigate through different structures and get their agendas approved or ratified. You may ask why? Why all this? Well, they claim, from the videos which we have shown you yesterday, we have come to understand that they look very much concerned about our young girls, women, and children. They say we are strategy, they are creating a huge demand in Africa, because they know if Africa accepts that agenda, it will be a huge marketing place for them. Meaning, with the implementation of the SRH agenda, they know they can promote the selling of condoms, their contraceptive pills, and hormones, and everything. So it's a huge marketing strategy or plan. And even in one of their documents, this is a UNESCO document, one of the UN agencies promoting comprehensive sexuality education in schools. It says they are scaling up CSE, and as you can see, clearly it says linkages to SRH services, meaning the condoms, contraceptives, hormones, and demand creation. So they want to create a demand. I want us to see one document, a very recent document, which we got from the AU website, the African Union website. It was posted in October of 2019, a very recent document. And it's a working document, and if you read, you'll see it's a continental policy. It's talking about a continental policy framework on sexual and reproductive health and rights, SRHR. And it's on this website, and if you see, it's talking also about the Public Financial Management Forum of 2019. So it's already there. I mean, the SRHR agenda is already in the AU document. And how did it get there? We have to go back and trace how it reached that stage. Here is one very important document, an African Union Commission document, and it says Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, SRHR. And it's a continental policy framework. When was it endorsed and ratified? Or who was behind it? You guessed it right, the same agencies, United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, and IPPF. They are the ones behind. And as you clearly see it here, it was developed by the African Union Commission in collaboration with the UNFPA and IPPF. When was it ratified? You can see it from this slide. It was adopted by the African Ministers of Health, the second African Union Conference of Health Ministers in Gaborone, Botswana, in October of 2005, 15 years back. 15 years back, AU had SRHR in its document, and later, a year later, in January of 2006, the heads of state, when they met in Khartoum, they endorsed it. And when you go into that document, you will find very, very troublesome, I mean, very troubling information within it. It's talking about abortion, legislative change with regard to abortion. saying the solution is not to bury one's head, but we have to make a positive legislative change and envisage a positive legislative change despite the ideological cloud surrounding the issue. So they want to make abortion legal, and they had priority actions that were listed. And amongst these priority actions, you will see they want to strengthen sexuality education. As early as 2006, the issue of sexuality education was in the AUDEC document already put in place. And they want to enable young people to have access to sexual and reproductive health, information, counseling, and services. They were out to provide the services. Like I said, when they say services, they mean condoms, contraceptives, and the like. They also want to develop and expand these services. What are youth-friendly services? These are the SRH services without parental consent. Whenever you see youth-friendly services, it always means parents out of the picture, meaning no parental consent. They also have involvement of the male child. Imagine the male child or the youth in SRHR issues and services. They want them to get involved in decision making with regard to SRHR. Within that same year, meaning September of 2006, they came out with the Maputo Plan of Action. That plan of action was intended to operationalize the earlier document which I showed you, the Continental Policy Framework for SRHR. So they want to operationalize that document, and they came out with a plan of action, which they call the Maputo Plan of Action. And the whole purpose of that plan of action was for universal access to comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services, SRH. And it was a concrete outcome of the African Union Conference of Ministers of Health again. And they met in Mozambique, Maputo, in September of 2006, as I said earlier. And Ministers of Health and delegates from 48 African countries unanimously agreed to implement this plan of action. You'll be shocked to see the details. It still has 9 action areas, and if you go into each one of them, all 8 of them, the 9th being monitoring and evaluation, all of the 8 elements have either a SRH or a SRHR or abortion as its DNA. And the first action area is SRHR services into primary health care. If you look at the second, SRH again as SRHR. So this has been there within the African Union document as early as 2006. Who was behind all this? You guessed it right. Again, it is the IPPF and UNFP. I'll show you how we came to know that. And after about 10 years, again, there was what is known as the Addis Ababa Declaration on Population and Development. Ministers of health and foreign ministers, mainly foreign ministers from 51 African countries came together in Addis. And as you can see, you see again the logo of UNFP in this document. And UNFP has even put it on its website. The Addis Ababa Declaration on Population and Development on the UNFPA website. What does it tell us? UNFPA is behind this agenda, so it's pushing it even further, even years after the Maputo Declaration or the Maputo Plan of Action. And this meeting, when you see the document, the Addis Ababa Declaration, it talks about reaffirming the Maputo Plan of Action and on sexual reproductive health and rights, and the Continental Policy Framework on SRHR, the documents I showed you earlier. So they are just pushing further and further into the African Union to implement their deceptive agendas. And it's also talking about SRHR being central, SRHR being central to the achievement of global, regional, and national commitments for sustainable development. So they are bringing SRHR as a solution or as a means of achieving sustainable development goals. It's also talking about universal access to SRH services and about providing essential package of comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services. These are condoms, contraceptives, etc. So the whole purpose of the Addis Ababa Declaration is to implement SRH services into the African nations. And something new, they are talking about women's and youth participation in decision making. They want them to empower, to be involved in policy making. The youth getting involved in policy making, and this, shows me personally what is written in the Holy Bible. It says, "As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them." This prophecy is being fulfilled. Isaiah is well. And when we look into documents, the articles within the Addis Ababa Declaration, it's talking about enacting and enforcing laws and policies within the national policy and legal framework to respect and protect, again, sexual and reproductive health and rights of all individuals. And Article 38 is talking about expanding safe abortion services. I'm sure most of you have been here yesterday, and I just want to make sure, because we shouldn't take it for granted. When they say SRHR, it always means, when they say sexual rights, it's all about LGBTI rights. And when they say reproductive rights, it's all about abortion. So SRHR is LGBTI plus abortion. So they are trying to push these agendas into the African Union. And so talking about gay rights, Africa has become, for them, a new frontier for the implementation of gay rights. Who is behind all this? Again, a high-level task force organized by IPPF and UNFPA. Who are the members? These are the members. I just want you to see who are sitting at the center of this group. You'll see two Africans. Now, the African, very prominent African leaders have become the vehicles or the proponents of to promote this agenda. Joaquin Chisano, the chairman of that high-level task force, and the then Minister of Health of Ethiopia, and now the current World Health Organization Director, Tedros Adhanom. These are the ones who are spearheading this movement. And if you go and look at what they came out with, they had a policy recommendation for ICPD beyond 2014, and their motto was SRHR for all. SRHR for all people, meaning gay rights and abortion rights for all people. And in that document, you will see they are discussing about revoking laws and banning practices that criminalize consensual adult sexual behaviors and relationship, meaning fornication, including sexual relations outside of marriage. and by removing provisions criminalizing same-sex relations and voluntary adult sex work. They want to legalize even prostitution besides LGBTI. And they wanted also to revise policies and legislations to make abortion safe and accessible and legal. And their other recommendation is ensuring universal access to SE, comprehensive sexuality education, for all young people. When they say all, they mean all, for everybody, including us. That means. So the outcome document was debated upon. There was serious negotiations. At the end, Chad totally rejected that outcome document, that Serva Declaration for ICPD. But there were nations who opposed at least 3 of the articles. And these 17 nations, I mean, including Chad, you will see their list here. And you will be shocked to find your nation missing. Kenya is not here, meaning it has totally accepted the Addis Ababa Declaration. Uganda is not here. And you may ask where Ghana is, Nigeria, and all these nations which you expect them to be here, they are not here. There are 6 strategy. I mean, the strategy by IPPF and UNFP, UN agencies to infiltrate the African institutions or the AU is get African ministers to unsuspectingly commit to advancing SRHR and CSE. I'll give you an example. This is the ESA commitment, meaning Eastern and Southern African Ministerial Commitment to CSE, meaning our ministers of health and education, they went to Cape Town. There was a meeting organized by IPPF and UNFP, and you know what happened in their commitment? It has a heavy time to act now, as if something urgent has come upon the continent of Africa. And it says we, the ministers of education and health from 20 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa, gathered in Cape Town, South Africa on 7 December 2013, working towards a vision, listen to this carefully, working towards a vision of young Africans who are global citizens and of the future, who are educated, healthy, resilient, socially responsible, informed decision makers, and with the capacity to contribute to their community, country, and region. So for this kind of young citizens to come up, what do they have to offer? What did they have to offer? CSE, comprehensive sexuality education. And they're saying the most recent scientific evidence demonstrates that comprehensive sexuality education, including education on safer sex and condom use. Imagine, safer sex and condom use does not lead to early sexual initiation, a total lie. Instead, quality sexual education can help to delay the initiation and frequency of sexual activity, reduce the number of sexual partners, increase the use of condoms, marketing plan, and contraception, and reduce sexual risk taking. Again, a total lie. So, they also said we have to urgently review and, where necessary, amend existing laws. They are out to amend laws and policies on age of consent when to start sexual activity, child protection and teacher codes of conduct. And they also talked about balance between protection and autonomy and the evolving capacity of adolescents as they begin to make their own choices. They are pushing young people to be decision makers. And they also said we need to integrate and scale up youth-friendly HRD and SRH services, the same. and access to the uptake of high-quality SRH services, abortion, and other related services. They also said that they have to ensure that health services are user-friendly, meaning children or young people getting those services without parental consent. You can see from their document, they are talking about CSE curriculum framework in place being implemented in each of the 20 nations, meaning CSE going into the educational curriculum. And by the end of 2015, you know, they are saying 50%. They want to decrease by 50% the number of adolescents and young people who do not have access to user-friendly SRH services. And there is a shocking statement in that outcome document. They also want to increase the number of all schools and teachers training institutions that provide CSC by 75%. They want to increase it, meaning each of the 20 nations should implement CSC in their schools and make it reach 75%. Who are these nations? I'm sure you will find your nation in this list. So South Sudan, Burundi, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya. I mean, I just highlighted the Eastern African nations. I'm just trying to awaken us to the possibility that if we come together and say no to this document, it's just a ministerial document, by the way. It was not adopted by heads of state either. So we have the right to push our legislators and tell them that we should come out of this ESA commitment. The UN African Group, on the other hand, within in New York and Geneva, they are pushing back. They are pushing back. In fact, in their 2015 statement to the 69th United Nations General Assembly, chaired by Senegalese on behalf of the African Group, that outcome document clearly says that the African Group does not think that comprehensive sexual education should be included as part of it. They are pushing against CSC. They even said the use of the phrase information and education in the context of sexual and reproductive health care services must not give rise to a right whereby young children and adolescents have access to any and all services in disregard for the responsibility of their parents. They are affirming that parents should have a responsibility over the decision of their children. But unfortunately, there is a visible huge gap or disconnect between the AU and the New York. And we have to bridge that disconnect. Why? Our diplomats at the UN are pushing back, but our ministers and diplomats at the AU are accepting those same policies which our diplomats are pushing back. So there is a difference in opinion, and this is very, very bad. We have to be able to improve on that. The seventh key strategy is to infiltrate African institutions to ensure SRHR is the African priority. They just want to make SRHR an African priority. To show you an example, this is an IPPF document put on their website. They clearly say that they work with governments, the African Union, regional economic commissions, the Pan-African Parliament, United Nations bodies and United Nations bodies to expand political and financial commitments to SRHR in Africa. IPPF is clearly telling us it is pushing this agenda within the African institutions. And here, like I told you earlier, it clearly tells us IPPF African region, IPPF AR means IPPF in the African region, was behind the advocacy document. It led the advocacy for the creation of the first continental framework for SRHR and the market of plan of action. So it's admitting that it was behind the document, which I showed you earlier, which was put in place in 2006. And it's also pushing further into our first ladies. I mean, it's bringing the agenda to our first ladies. Here you see, again, an IPPF website document where it says Africa First Ladies commit to advocate for women's sexual reproductive health and rights. You see, this institution, IPPF is funding the OFLA, meaning the Organization of African First Ladies. Their office is being funded by IPPF, and in 2017, as you can see it here, October of 2017, it brought together many African First Ladies, including that of Ethiopia, Niger, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and South Africa, name it. They were there to promote SRH. So it is coming behind our heads of state. If you can get hold of the First Lady, it's very easy to get hold of the head of state. Isn't that so? Yeah. If you get the woman, you get the man. So they are doing everything to get this agenda implemented in the African continent. And I want to show you another very traveling document. We are coming nearer and nearer. This is a 2018 document. And it's an outcome document from a meeting held in Accra, Ghana, in 2018, November of 2018, meaning just a year back. And it's talking about submission of Africa's inputs to the 25-year review of the program of action of the ICPD. I mean, they were preparing an input for the ICPD summit here in Nairobi. They were preparing for that, for this meeting a year earlier. And another document. This is also a 2019 document, August of 2019. And here you see a session by a specialized technical committee within the AU. And the document clearly talks about the session, that session being co-chaired by African Union Commission and UNFPA, and it will feature a presentation on Nairobi Summit, meaning an AU meeting being co-chaired by a UN agency to bring about a united voice at the Nairobi Summit. And who were the nations attending that meeting? You see all these nations, almost all of them, all of the nations represented here must have been there. Angola, Ethiopia, Ghana, Mozambique, Namibia, Sierra Leone, all of them have been there. And the outcome document from that meeting shows that they were talking about an urgency, that there should be an emphasis on the urgency for governments to address and pay attention to SRHR for adolescents, and placing more emphasis again on SRHR of girls and women. And a very troubling part of the document is a need to include LGBTQ issues. So AU has already been hijacked, as you can clearly see. So this is a 2019 document, August, meaning 3 or 4 months back. Can you imagine? In fact, I'm showing you another very important document, proposed commitment for consideration for the Nairobi Summit, AU's proposed commitment. And again, this is an October 2019 document, and it's talking about implementation and funding of the ICPD program of action and the Addis Ababa Declaration of for population and development. And it's also talking about, you see that third point, we commit to integrate a comprehensive package of SRHR interventions into the national policies, strategies for universal health coverage, and programs, and intensify the implementation across our countries of continental frameworks such as the MAP-TO plan of action for the operationalization of the continental policy framework on SRHR. For those of you who have been with us from the start of this presentation, you know, you understand what this means. So all the way, I mean, the EU is just coming into their way, it's just following their lead. But the good news is, as some of you have heard yesterday at the breakfast, our ambassadors have fought to annul this document. It's now, it has now been shelved, and it's not no more active. So let's come to IPPF again. It has a strategic framework which goes all the way up to 2022, and there you see about the promotion of safe abortion services, and it also talks about focusing on expanding access to quality of comprehensive sexuality education around the world. They want to promote CSC all over the world, and they want to run popular campaigns to mobilize those who support SRHR. If you see here, it's talking about the same IPPF document in their website. It's talking about IPPFR as the leading sexual and reproductive health service delivery organization in Africa, the leading organization that is promoting abortion, LGBT issues, contraceptives, and so on. So it is admitting that it's doing all this. I want to show you one document which was classified at the moment. The African Regional Office of IPPF selecting 19 African countries to double the number of SRH services, including abortion. They are working to double the services. Here you see another very troubling document again on their website. Achieving SRHR is a human right obligation for Africa. Who is saying this? IPPF. I mean, who is IPPF? To put an obligation on us, on us Africans, to implement LGBTI issues and abortion issues. Here you see one document, comprehensive sexuality education document, a guideline which was produced in Ghana, together the Ghana Education Service with the support and help of UNFPA. They had a guideline, and if you go into it, it's talking about proposed guidelines, the term comprehensive sexuality and reproductive health education. They changed CSC, I mean, to disguise it with another name. They changed the name into comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education. Fortunately, the people in Ghana are pushing it back. Even the president, like we showed yesterday, he said this will not be implemented under my watch. Another key strategy used by IPPF is to organize and train African SRHR youth advocacy groups. I mean, they are now selecting young people to train them to become advocates for SRHR. In fact, UNFPA has about 6,000 trained youth who come into their meetings, who go to different places to promote their agenda. You have seen one document yesterday, the road to Nairobi. You see a young lady sitting beside the UNFPA director talking about promoting the UNFPA agenda. And IPPF, to do that, it has its own document. It says, you want to change the world? Here is how. And the answer, young people as advocates. we have to have young people as advocates of SRHR. They also link SRHR to all of SDGs, meaning Sustainable Development Goals. If you see one of the goals, target 3.7, it's talking about SRHR. So they have gone all the way to link them with Sustainable Development Goals. And WHO has also been hijacked into this agenda, and the institution which should have been protecting our health is now becoming forefront in promoting an agenda that is against the health of our children. So, in the next 2 minutes, I'll be showing you, this is my final part, what they are talking about with regard to family planning, the need of unmet need in Africa. And you see, they are talking about the African fertility, and they are saying we should reduce the African fertility rate. I mean, Western nations have the lowest fertility rate. Why should they need to worry about us? They should, in fact, raise their fertility rate. Well, they look more concerned. But the truth is, Africa is doing well. Our fertility is, although he was a eugenicist, meaning somebody who would like, who wants to have a pure race. She thought that there were inferior races like Orientals, Jews, and blacks, and she referred to these groups of people as human beings. And in her own words, she said the most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. These are the kind of people who are behind this agenda. And about marital sex, she said the marriage bed is the most degenerating influence in the social order. What do you expect from IPPF if its founder is like that? The other person behind the comprehensive sexuality agenda is Dr. Alfred Kinsey. Who was he? A homosexual. In fact, a sadomasochistic homosexual. I have done a lot of research about him the last 10 years. And he was a man who said any and all forms of sexual activity are healthy. Pedophilia, meaning sex with children and infants, is okay. In fact, he was sexually molesting even newborns in the name of scientific study. He also said bestiality, meaning sex with animals, is all right, and extramarital intercourse is okay. But we have leaders like the late President of Ghana, who said openly to David Cameron, you can't threaten us with gay airs. We need such leaders. Even the Gambian president said we cannot offend God for foreign aid. And he said we would rather eat grass than accept homosexual behavior. So I also show you one very prominent ambassador at the UN bloc, Ambassador Osman Saki, who fought for the African nations, pushing back the CSC agenda. God bless Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Seyum. We are extremely grateful for your presentation and so in depth with introducing and explaining the infiltration of SRHR in Africa through the African Union process. It's especially worrisome, some of the things that are presented here. I think especially the involvement of children, youth in the process, and especially the thought that IPPF is telling Africans that they have to implement these things. So we are going to have time for a couple of questions, but before we do, we want to make sure that all of you have received this. This is we call it our petition, and it will link you to the information, further information on all of these issues. We are going to show you, after the question, we're going to show you immediately following this. So we hope you'll come and see it. It's called, the Cultural Imperialism video. And so we'll show you a trailer, and we will have time for just a couple of questions, but there'll be time for questions after the. Okay, all right. You want to do it now? Okay.
We have another event that we have to start promptly at the hour, so half of our team has to leave. So we're going to show this clip first of what we're going to show in the lecture hall. It's Cultural Imperialism, the Sexual Rights Agenda, and we'll show you this trailer. That's going to be the first half of our presentation the next hour in the lecture hall. And also Dr. Seyum will also be presenting there on the myths related to condoms and all the things that the Western nations are trying to push on the African nations. So we'll just show this really quick. Our team will leave to go set up in the lecture hall while we continue here with question and answer from this presentation.
Has just been manipulation.
The Obama administration defends the human rights of LGBT people as part of our comprehensive human rights policy and as a priority of our foreign policy.
I was accosted by a member of staff of the UNFPA. I was accosted on the streets of New York. It was about, again, pushing the sexual rights movement.
What is amazing is that these countries that are harassing us, smaller countries, in these countries, the rate of HIV/AIDS among the homosexual groups there, it is said to be out of control.
Essentially now, if we don't accept this, we're actually being told that we will not get aid, we will not get grants, we will not get monetary assistance.
Planned Parenthood was passing out a booklet for HIV positive youth at the United Nations called Healthy, Happy and Hot.
It's about starting when we're with children, about the expectation of roles, and we need to start there.
This kind of education tells youth they can have fun and have sex and just use condom.
It is an affront to the principles of the UN Charter. A UN agency should not be allowed to overstep its bounds in such a manner.
It's deception.
That we're going to be showing at 11. Right at 11 o'clock. So we'll now do the question and answer session for this session. If you have comments or questions, I'll go down.
Thank you so much for your presentation and giving us a history of the African perspective. I have been in this journey since 1998, and I always get amazed that the other side is quite organized, and they seem to be always ahead. How can we, or in your experience generally, how can we somehow not be on their path of always being behind them and saying we have to undo this, we have to undo this. Because you had of 2005, 2013, I'm sure this meeting already was organized and strategized several years ago. We get to learn about it later, then it's almost impossible to almost break it off. What do we need to do to make sure that we're ahead of getting our own alternative issues addressed? And I mean, you make a comment that is very interesting. At an international level, the president saying no to these things. Of course, at the African Union level, it's our ministers. And we know that our ministers, is very easy to corner them with a flight, with some lunch, with some money, and before they don't even read the documents, and eventually they approve these things. I'm actually surprised that they managed to do what they are doing in the AU, and it looks like this is a backdoor that will be used to say, look, Africa has said, therefore, and Africa is always the problem, the place with problems. So if they have said yes to these things, the rest of the world can follow. Just your comments.
Another comment or question? Oh.
Thank you so much for the presentation that was just done. I'm Joseph from St. Paul's University. You talked about the infiltration of the same issues through institutions. My question to you and the entire team, what do you have presenting the Christian thought or the foundations of humanity, even in such institutions that we can protect our young people? What grounds do we have anything that we can influence if they're targeting education? It is the plan that we have.
Another comment?
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Anne Kamila. I'm from the Catholic Nurses Association. I am a retired nurse. I just retired last year. I've been working with the Ministry of Health for the last many years. What I'm surprised about is that all these things we used to hear, youth-friendly services, condoms, family planning. The CSE, I think I came to hear about 2 or so years ago. And I think I got it through the internet, some information. And I passed it around and tried asking my colleagues, have you seen this? Have you heard about this? Is it being done? But the ones who I was with were not out there with the reproductive health services and things like that. So they didn't know. So I'm just wondering, even those who knew, like those who were into reproductive health, is this what they do? Is this what is done? And if it is what is done, do they know exactly where it came from, how it started? Because I think even as you were watching the question and answer interview that was held here last week as a prelude to this, the person from, I don't know whether it's UNFPA, when she was asked about whether the parents will continue to have rights over their children, she said yes. That Kenyans, we follow the constitution, so there is nothing like that. So I looked at it and said, this is all lies, and they can lie, looking at you straight in the eye, and they are our own people. That's what I'm surprised that we are doing this to our own children, our families, and it's like we have no feeling. So I'm so sad about it, but I hope that this is an opening for all of us. Thank you.
Let me answer the first three, and we'll have a second round. To start with your question, like you said, when they come out properly and you ask them, they tell you that they don't do these things. For example, in the UNFPA website, you can clearly see that UNFPA does not promote abortion. But another UNFPA document, when you study, we showed it yesterday, it talks about promotion of abortion. So they are lying. It's an outright lie. So these are the kind of deceptive techniques they have been using all over the years. So our people have been deceived. I mean, there are well-meaning, good people who are within that system, who were there just to get jobs and to do the things that is right, which looks right to them, but who have been hijacked somehow by the system. And once in the system, even if they know the truth, they cannot openly speak because they will be reprimanded or they will lose their jobs. So they are in such difficulty. We have come up with such people within that system. So it's a deceptive agenda that they are running. So they are definitely trying to alienate children from their parents. It's all there in their documents. When they say use friendly services, it always means having parental consent out of the picture, getting it out of the picture. But when you ask them face to face, they say we still. But so what should we do? We have to show them in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, in the Child Protection Policy, it's all there. I mean, parents have the prior right to take care of their children, not UN agencies. So we have to rise up and defend that, showing UN documents, consensus documents. So how should we fight all this? My brother's question, the first question, I mean, it's true. We are following behind, we are training behind, they are well organized and doing things strategically. But now the whole purpose of us sitting together here and deliberating is to help us get the necessary knowledge to rise up and say, no, enough is enough. I mean, from today onwards, we cannot be the same people. We have to look into the agreements that have been made, be it in foreign aid, promotion of health services, and so on. We have to tell our legislators or ministers of health, education, we have to say, you have to look into the document and you have to be transparent. When things are being debated in Parliament, the people should know what those things are. And I think Sharon would like to add something about this as well.
I wanted to add, when he talked about they use a framework strategy, we've seen it country by country, we've seen it in the United States. We were just fighting it in my state of Arizona, where they'll create a framework of principles that should be taught at certain ages. And they have very nice sounding words in these principles, and they try to get a state legislature or a nation or a state or a district to pass this framework that sounds really, really nice. But then there's a curriculum attached to it that they don't show what's in it. And when we show people what's in the curriculum, everyone goes crazy, they march, they stop, they work and they try to get it. We had the Hispanic community in Tucson, Arizona, when they saw what they were trying to pass in the district there, they marched out. They've never been active on any other issue, but they marched on this issue and came to the meetings and shut it down. Even though there were 3 Planned Parenthood supported board members on the school district out of 5, they still were embarrassed because so much pressure was put on them. And I just want to be careful that we don't want to say, we don't believe that every person who works for a UN agency or even IPPF has this agenda. Many don't. And they're very, very careful in Africa, the way they go about it. And so I'll just share an experience on the airplane on the way over here. I sat next to a man who was over a very high-level business, or he was the African director, he was African, and he said, what are you doing? And I started telling him, I pulled up my laptop, and I showed him what my presentation was, and all the things, all the proofs that UNFPA was promoting abortion, comprehensive sexuality education, what was in that, LGBT rights, even transgender rights for children. I mean, I have all the proofs in their own strategy documents for this conference. And it was interesting to see his reaction because he partners with UNFPA in his business all over Africa. He's been in all sorts of planning meetings with UNFPA. And as I was telling him, first it was hard for him to accept. But after a while, he's like, I knew something wasn't quite right. This is the reaction I get from most. I knew this happened with the chief education officer for another African country when we showed her the information. I knew something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't, because the wording is so deceptive. She didn't know how to put her finger on it and how to put it all together. He said, when we're doing these strategy meetings, and I suggest, well, why don't we strengthen families? I'm just realizing none of that got into the plan that we're supposed to present here at the Nairobi Summit. I said, yeah, I can tell you what got into the plan. It was SRHR and CSE, because that's all they care about. He's like, yeah, that's what happened. And he was so upset. He said, this is going to change. This is going to change. My eyes are open now. And so we have the opportunity to talk to good people who are within these agencies and help them see the underlying agenda. And then they can make good choices with that. But we don't want to say everybody who works for these organizations has this agenda. It's not true, but definitely at the top. Definitely those that are driving the policies.
To add to what Sharon said and to answer the second question, we also had an encounter with another UNNET's official, in fact, the regional director, while we were coming to Nairobi within the same plane. And our friend was talking to her, and that lady was saying CSE is very good. She said she's a believer, and but she's working for UNAIDS to promote CSE. And when our friend was discussing in detail what CSE is all about, what she finally said was, I don't want to lose my job. It's a good position, so I have to navigate. This is the word she used. I have to navigate. We have to make a decision today. Are we going to continue to navigate or stand for the truth? That's the whole. We have to work at all levels. We have to even show our leaders what ICPD25 is really all about, because they don't know. Second, our ministers who are signing these documents, they have been hijacked, they have been bought with things that our brother mentioned, and they don't even see what is in the document. They just believe those specialized technical committees, which they call STCs, and the outcome document doesn't even pass through the necessary bodies within the AU structure. This is what is happening. This is what we have visibly seen within the AU structure. They just bypass the PRCs, the Council of Ministers, and so on, and they just get it into a form of documents to be ratified. So we must make aware our people who are in higher positions, and at the grassroots level we have to also work to sensitize our people that this agenda is creeping in many forms. In fact, it has been there for many years, but it's possible to uproot it even now. With regard to education, parents should be able to follow up on their children, what kind of education they are getting in their schools. Parents have the right to ask them. Some nations are, in fact, making it criminal to do that. But for us Africans, it's not too late. We can do it. Other questions?
Thank you so much. Family Watch, you encourage us, and we feel proud that there are people out there
who are still really very courageous and are calling upon all of us also to be very courageous. I know that talking about this is something that very many people end up fearing. I remember there was a time I made a presentation in the Ministry of Health, and we're clearly showing them that a number of women are opting for fertility awareness methods because these methods are even much more effective than most of their, other methods of contraception. And the truth is, the information is not known to a very big extent. And we are telling them methods that we are talking about are also accepted by WHO. They're recognized as effective methods. So why don't we give women these options? So many people really did not know. It is only when one gentleman went immediately online to confirm that, oh, so these methods are also there. And when I finished giving the talk, one of them walked up to me and said, thank you for being brave. Many of us know that these methods actually work, but we fear to talk about it. Me and my wife, this is what we use. These people get to know the truth, the information, they use it for themselves, they do not want to let others know. Now, I know this is something that is a disease. It is something that if we continue to keep quiet, we are not getting anywhere. So all we need to do is, like you started, can we keep this fire very hot? We need to keep this fire burning. We need to keep tweeting. We need to keep giving this information to people without any fear. Because it is only when people get to know the information that yes, maybe one or two will be saved. Now, one thing I really want to find out is, in Uganda, there is now there is the massive immunization that keeps taking place, and the recent one was the rubella immunization, where parents were not even given chance to consent, were only informed that these children were all going to be immunized. There was of course a lot of resistance until when even the minister had to take her own child for this, to try to prove to the people that there is really nothing so wrong with this. But of course we're also hearing stories that are coming in that some of the children, especially those who had other conditions, were really affected by this immunization. So, I don't know if Family Watch could be having some bit of factual information about some of these. Because we are now seeing, it looks like these guys, the mode of action is being modernized, is being improved, is being refined, and we are sometimes wonder which one is really the truth. And then there was the current very massive, the big projects that promoted circumcision almost all over the country. And the message also was not clearly made known to the people. It seems more of, money making. Is it really to really help our people in reality? So please, if you have any comment on those, that would be good for us too.
Another comment or question?
Thanks so much. I just wanted to add on what she said. I think two things. Should go beyond sharing information, but also enter into science. Produce evidence that will keep the conversation going. I was once in a conference in Tanzania, and a nurse who works at the Ministry of Health stood up and said, we the people who are here, speak so much, but we don't speak from evidence. But on the other side, most people produce data, package evidence. So I think as a community of people of faith, I think we must begin also to invest our resources in science research and document that research to be able also to show the policymakers. I happen to work with economists in the ministry. You know, as an economist or as a government planner, your role is policy. You want to weigh options. And you want to do so based on evidence. So whoever comes with convincing evidence is the person you want to follow. So I think I just want to build on what you're saying and say that as a people of faith, we must, recruit scientists who go to the laboratory and check these things. We must recruit economists who are able to go to the field and look at people's behaviors, people's incentives towards all these conversations, and be able to package them to engage in a conversation. Lastly, I think we also need, and I've always spoken to friends in this country, pro-life friends, that using the words of Pope Francis, build a bridge between us and them. Once you build a wall, you start pointing fingers, conversation becomes also very, 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 very difficult. Thank you.
Another question?
Contribution. So much. Thank you again. My name is Kaberia, and I would like to make two requests. The first is in relation to what this lady has mentioned. Do we have hashtags that we are carrying that will generate or just stimulate that conversation? If they are, can we share them immediately and probably for the whole region to be communicating that? And the second one would be, I think, related to what that gentleman mentioned. You've not yet given us, do we have African alternatives to this education that are not geared to that alternative agenda? And should we have such, where can they get support? Where can we plug in to ensure that we are presenting actually the right solutions to these challenges that we're facing? Thank you.
So let's answer these three questions and we'll come to this side. Sharon will be answering you.
Several things. There was a question about plans. There was a question, how do we move forward? Do we have a plan? There was a question about how do we use evidence and scientific data like the other side? And then we've just been asked, what is the alternative? Do we have a replacement? Do we have something that's African? I'll start with, do we have a plan? We do have a plan. And part of the plan is actually, well, it's threefold. Awareness, that's what we have to do first. People need to understand. Then they need to know what they need to do, what action steps, and they need to be motivated to act. Okay? I'll give you the model that we did in Uganda that we would like to spread in every country. We have two plans. We had some people approach us that said, please, we want to take your documentary, The War on Children, the comprehensive sexuality education, all throughout Uganda. This was Human Life International. This is the same documentary that's going to be shown at 4 o'clock at the lecture hall. We strongly encourage you to go see this documentary. This mobilizes and educates people more than any tool that we have ever seen. It really initiated a grassroots movement in Uganda, and it motivated the parliamentarians in Uganda to pass a law against comprehensive sexuality education. So you can access that online at stopcse.org. You can download it, you can use it. So we all need to work together to raise awareness, and that's a wonderful tool. In the next session in the lecture hall that starts at 11, we're also showing cultural imperialism, the sexual rights agenda. People first have to be aware of the agenda, and it's very hard for them to believe it unless they see the proof. So in these documentaries, we have the proof. And on our websites, we have the text and the documents that back all that up. We never say something that we cannot actually back up and show from the UN's own materials or IPPF's own materials what they are teaching or what are they promoting. We don't just say it, we show that to you in those documentaries. So that's one thing. We also are working to open up a coalition of organizations in every country, one by one. And that's our director, Dr. Seyum. That's one of his goals is to help create like a Protect Kenya Children Coalition to help unite all the religions, all the NGOs, all under one umbrella. And so you'll notice that South Africa created their coalition like that. And they marched on their education ministry, and they opposed what was happening, and now the government is having to decide what they're going to do. So if the people don't want it, if the people say we won't take it, if the religious leaders rise up, and that just happened in Ghana as well, then the government can't do it. The government won't do it. They don't want to get thrown out of office. They're not going to try to force something on you. Planned Parenthood and the UN agencies will continue to try to get it in and get around and do it through their community programs, try to get it to the children through their phone apps, and they have ways of trying to still get it into the community. But at least you can work to stop the rollout officially through the schools by simply raising awareness with some of the tools that we have. And with regard to social science data or evidence, again, we only use evidence. If you sign that petition, Stand for the Family, we will be sending you our book, Stand for the Family. And that has lots of social science-based talking points, evidence, the presentation that Dr. Sayoum is going to give after the next documentary, Cultural Imperialism. It's all based on evidence, peer-reviewed studies. We look at the best studies.
From where? From Africa or?
They're from all over. The studies are from all over. And one study in particular that's going to be announced tonight, it's being published in a peer-reviewed journal as we speak, and we have an advanced copy, is something called Re-examining the Evidence for Comprehensive Sex Education in the Schools. And this was an independent research institute that looked at the same data that UNESCO cites to and all the the other UN agencies' copies, where they say comprehensive sexuality education has been proven to reduce partners, to do this, to do that. It will help reduce STDs and pregnancies, and it's been proven not to sexualize children. And then they stigmatize abstinence by saying abstinence-only programs have been proven not to do this. So this independent research institute looked at the same studies in that database. They also went to the database of the United States CDC, the Center for Disease Control. So they took all of the studies that UNESCO says are credible studies, the CDC says are credible studies, and they looked at all of them and said, what does the research show? And what they found was, and we'll be passing out copies of this study. We got permission to publish, to print out some only for this conference in advance of it being actually published in the peer-reviewed journal. It found that CSC programs in the schools in Africa had an 89% failure rate, did not have evidence of preventing teen pregnancy and STDs, and 24% of the programs increased sexual risk taking in the youth. So their data, the way they portray it, the way they put the data, I'll just give you an example of how they came up with their claims. Let's say there's a comprehensive sex education program, and the developer or the marketer for the program did their own evaluation, and they found some evidence that it was successful. Then they had two other studies that were independent of the same program that found either no evidence or even harm. Well, they point to the first study. That's not evidence. Okay? So the study you can find online right now. You can go to sexedreport.org. And it lists the program, it shows you the evidence, it shows whether the evaluations came from an independent expert or the program developer. It shows you exactly it's detailed, it's very detailed, and they can't refute what's in there. So the evidence shows, actually, there's very limited evidence for abstinence, but the abstinence evidence that there is available shows much better results. Another question?
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Yeah. Just to build a bit on what she talked about health. I work in the grassroots, and yesterday when we were presenting the petition at the office of the president, two gentlemen came to me because what we've been doing is to just create a bit of awareness of what all this means to the community. And the question that is arising is when it comes down to the ground, it is so practical, and they are wondering what we do. Like now, the gentleman who came to me yesterday was asking me, was telling me that they are already now doing the immunization in the schools. Actually, they have started in the grassroots, and the HPV is being done already, and they came to their school, and this gentleman said that his child is not going to be immunized, and he was summoned later by the chief. And so, but he said that his son is not going to be to agree to it. But then now he said that they need to give him time. And for me, I told him that was a great thing that he did. But then now he came with the question, what does he do? Because even when we are talking of about the comprehensive sexual education, they are asking us now, where do we take our children? Where do we remove them from the schools? And how do we handle it? And that is one of the questions that we are finding in the grassroots. And so just to ask, because now when it comes to the ground, it's so practical, and we have to give them, and even suggest solutions to this kind of thing, because like when you're telling them, it's like, it's so theoretical, there's a lot of theory in it, but then now when it comes down to the real thing, it becomes so difficult for them. I don't know what you can say about it, and yeah.
Another one.
Still, on the same note that I did ask, what interventions do we have for the schools, especially the universities, the tertiary institutions where our youth are caught up in these kinds of events? I come from the coastal region, county number 006, Data Taveta. But in 2015, when we started seeing these challenges, and I personally, with us and friends in the universities, students who come from that region, we actually did register ourselves as Alternative Leaders Association, where we bring all the youth in the university and tertiary institutions on board, and we try to make them resonate with the environment and try to answer to the challenges that are there, challenges of poverty, all these kind of mess that our youths are involved themselves in, and bring the youths to answer to those questions. And actually, the association has done so great. We sit down with the CCs in charge of departments of education. We reason together with the MPs around there, and we question them about what this menace they are bringing to the youth. Thank God that even the governor himself, at first when he came in, he was doing a lot of PR, buying these poisonous things to the youth, like Mira and other drugs, such that he can gain mileage and make him stand in that position, in that office. But this is the same governor, after we pushed him, he had to revoke those things, to not be sold in that place, like these illicit brews and everything of the kind. So it is purposeful actions that are the same minds that have been eroded. Can we do practical actions that can unpack this kind of nonsense that is being thrown on these people, our youths, making them feel they're different, they don't have, it's actually making them lose value even of their own lives. That's what we have actually done. But the most is that as we take these steps, we are actually met by some higher profile kind of authorities that tend to dwindle down these efforts that we are instilling in our youth. But practically, with what you say, the practical data that we have, that we've seen youth see sense in their own lives and actually the impact that they are creating in the community, the difference that the youth in the AM Leadership Association and other youths who are not there, the difference that is there, it's actually allowing and causing high kind of alarm that people are forcing their children, why can't you join this association? And that's what actually we're having down there.
One last question here, and we have to close this session because...
Thank you very much. My name is Mary, and I have been involved in this kind of thing since the early 90s. I think the first time they mentioned about introducing sex education in schools. And I always feel that we come a bit late because we could take those same children, we could instill values, and probably we need to be very organized to see how to bring up the children, not waiting to see what the other side puts in, that we react against it. I always feel that we react, most of the things we do is reacting against, but maybe if we have something that is continuous education, positive continuous education, I'm glad to hear that they have something for young people, but really something that can be offered into schools. I think in the program I saw alternative to sexuality education, and I was happy about that. But I really long for that so that we are not always reacting, because at the beginning people sort of stand aside and wonder why we are saying no when we have nothing to offer. I don't mean we have nothing to offer, but they always wonder, why do you have to start from the negative, not this? Because why don't you come earlier and tell us how we can raise our children so that they are not affected so much by the media, etc., etc.
Thank you.
Sorry, just let me just build up on that, yeah. And it's because of a conversation I had last evening with somebody on the other side from UNICEF, and it was actually regarding the CSC. Just as she has actually said in regard to we react, and what also Raymond asked about, what is it that we can do that we don't always seem to be lagging behind? Because I did have this discussion with the lady who apparently happened to have been part of the team that was actually putting together the curriculum of the CSC. And she actually said during her schooling years, curriculum development was one of the most difficult things. And so when I said, okay, what is it that you're discussing in terms of having a 4-year-old being taught about sex? And she said, all we are saying is because of the situations that are happening in our society today, that we cannot run away from this. And all she said, at that age, what we want to tell them is good touch and bad touch. But then I said, how are you monitoring to ensure that this good touch and this bad touch is being disseminated in the way that you people want it to be done? And okay, we argued here and the final conversation was, this thing, we've been working on it for the longest time, and then you guys are not coming now, too late now to come and say you don't want it. My question is there a way that now the two sides can find a way of how they can work together? I don't know, because we are here, we're discussing this, they are there, they're discussing that. But at the end of the day, when you think about it, we're talking about what's happening to our children. It's like the African saying that goes, when two bulls fight, it's the grass that suffers. So I'm just only wondering, is there a way we can look into this and see that as we try to up our act in terms of like we'll not be lagging behind, bring the two teams together? Because I feel that even before this CSC was rolled out, were they talking to other people? Who are the people they were talking to? Or did they just go on the ground, see what they thought was necessary, and roll out the curriculum?
Thank you. I will hand over.
Just a comment on the hashtag. I've just got it from the ICPD25 does not represent me as the hashtag. ICPD25 does not represent me.
He says ICPD25 does not represent me as the hashtag that has been set up.
Sharon will answer your question and the alternatives we have, and then I'll come and make a closing remark.
So these questions are better for our session at 4 o'clock, which is on comprehensive sexuality education. We would strongly encourage you to go to the U.S. government events because, number one, they're going to be presenting on sexual risk avoidance education, which that's the abstinence-based education, and they might be able to connect you to some good curriculum. There's also some other events here, like she said, that are alternatives to comprehensive sexuality education. And there's also a session from the U.S. government on how to apply for a grant. And maybe there's some opportunities to get sexual risk avoidance education programs that teach children to avoid 100% of the risk. But if you want to come to the 4 o'clock session, that's going to be more of the in-depth discussion of comprehensive sexuality education. We have to close because there's another group that needs this room. And so we'll be going over to the lecture hall to show that documentary, Cultural Imperialism. Then we'd also like to strongly encourage you to come at 2:30 to the same lecture hall, because there's going to be a very important intergovernmental panel on global pro-life policies. And there are high-level people coming, some secretaries of families, some heads of delegations from all around the world, who are also troubled by what's happening at the Nairobi summit, and that want the pro-life policies to be promoted, and they'll be giving statements. And we really want everybody in this room to be there to support them at 2:30 and hear what they have to say.
Thank you, Sharon. Some 2 remarks. The first about immunization. Family Watch hasn't done any research so far about these issues, and doesn't have any stand, so you can do your own research and reach a conclusion. With regard to keeping this fire burning, I mean, today, these days, I mean, we can take these days as a launching pad for the beginning of a movement, starting from East Africa, covering the whole of the continent. We should not be reactionary all the time, putting out the fire. We have to come to the front, and we have to always sound the alarm first. The best defense is offense. You know that. We have to always come out first and tell the truth. If we continuously do that, I mean, the lies will not have any place in the hearts of our people. And the other thing I have to warn us is keeping silent is like being partners. So I have someone who's saying, on Harvard, who's saying, keeping silent in the face of evil is itself evil. And if we don't do anything, in fact, we are doing something. So please, let's not be something which we do just in this week. It must be something we should continue. So the Protect Kenyan Child, which we are going to form as a coalition, could be an igniting coalition to promote these kinds of activities in the future within Kenya, and it can even go and reach other nations as well. So let's keep this thing running. Your Lordship, welcome. Thank you for coming again. And I think we have to conclude this session. And if you have any other questions with regard to that, you can write them up in the next session. If we have time, we will answer. Thank you, all of you.
Have any of these slips, please hand it to us. If you didn't get one, our team ran into the other room with the empty copies. You can sign this online at standforthefamily.org. Standforthefamily.org. And then you'll get our information. Does somebody else? Pardon? Do you want one of these? Yeah, we have them in the next session. My team moved all of our materials over there. So they're all in the lecture hall, and we can pass them out there. I apologize.